Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we are at the very tail end of functionality for version 12.0 of Wolfram Language. We haven't been doing very many live streams recently because basically we're just squashing bugs, or people are just squashing bugs, and I'm working on some other things, and we will be restarting lots of exciting new stuff as soon as 12.0 is out the door. But right now we're just dealing with the tail end of 12.0, and part of that tail is documentation. I thought we'd finished this, but apparently not. Remaining documentation for the database integration project. So looks like aggregated entity class is the thing that we have to talk about here. Is that right? And what part of this have we not discussed?
You wanted to see more examples?
Okay.
We already reviewed this with Arnold, but yeah, mainly you wanted to see more examples.
So these other ones are already reviewed and finished, we think.
Yes. Correct? Yeah, I also wrote the updates of each function that you have not reviewed. It's good.
I'm sorry, what do you mean? Where? Oh. Okay.
I remember that last time we talked about this, there was a question of what to call the function that does the aggregation. And I think that in group by is called the combiner.
Okay, let's take a look here. So this we have gone over. Represents an entity class containing a single entity. So what, this thing gprop?
No, it's the first one. It's the f in the second argument that are the combiners.
All right, so well, now what happens if I just say, okay, so hold on here. Okay, so that does nothing until we resolve with, I don't understand why I have to repeat total area 17 times. Do you understand? Fantastic. What the hell's that? What is that? Guys?
I have no idea.
It looks like a quantity framework error that has appeared before.
Yeah, well, so it needs to be nailed down. Okay, so let's look at what this is. Why is it an aggregated entity class? Why does that, I mean, when it says represents an entity class containing, so the only thing I can ask about here is total area.
Well, that's one, in that case, yes. But of course, if you have a list of rules in the second argument and you have a third argument, then you can have a bunch more stuff. So you can group by elements by period and then compute all sorts of, max, min, and
what
average.
Is the thing that is being fed in here, the E that's being fed in here? What is this? I don't understand.
Okay, so that's the, okay, that gets fed the groups.
But I don't understand. The group can't have an area here.
It's effectively an association that has certain keys. In this case, property values that are lists that you then can aggregate.
I'm not buying this. I don't understand. This seems like a hack. What is E? Let's imagine that I just say, echo.
See, E are temporary entity classes that corresponds to the things that are being grouped. So if the third argument, in that case,
interesting. What did you hack here? What did it do? What happened here?
No idea. I mean, this is Tony's implementation.
But Tony, shouldn't this have worked?
Yes.
And what would you expect it to have echoed?
It should have echoed an association. So the question is whether that should work or not. Probably yes.
No, but that's not an association. That's the whole entity class of all countries. I mean, then the fact
it's not really a class. It can't be a class.
I don't understand what it is. I don't understand what that function is.
Stephen, if you think about it as the class of all countries, if you ask the area of the class of all countries, you get out a list of values. And so, in that sense, it is the class.
Look, I don't care what sense it is. What is the E that is this entity function? Usually is a function being applied to entities where E is an entity, correct?
Yeah. So there are two ways you can answer that. What it is philosophically and what it is practically. Philosophically, it's a new kind of intermediate entity. And practically, it's an association because you can view an entity as an association, basically as its property association.
Yeah, okay. So is this the only function? Is this the only case in the system where entity function doesn't take an entity as its formal variable?
But it takes a class. And there are other cases where entity function takes a class.
No, that's
like
not true.
What?
It can't be a class.
It takes a transposed class, really.
No. Listen. Entity function, in its documentation and everything, says it is being fed entities, correct?
Yes.
Single formal parameter, blah, blah, blah.
It says that it's used like an entity property, but yeah, it binds, but it says in the details that in the case of an aggregated entity class, it doesn't bind to an entity. I mean, we've had this discussion the last time. The thing is that the same as function, it doesn't really know what it binds to.
Oh, I see. The reason this doesn't work is because echo is not one of those supported functions, and it's just silently failing. Is that correct?
No, that echo should work within memory entities. Sorry, with built-ins, because this is happening client side. So it's only on the databases that those are the only functions that are supported.
Is that true for all SQLs, this list?
I think that list, yes. Did we have a problem with regex in MySQL, Ricardo?
Yeah, regex support needs to be improved, yes.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
That regex should be improved because unfortunately some databases are supporting only like style operations, and also like we should be able to transform like.
I want to know why. I'm sorry.
No, we're just saying that in SQL when you're doing full text search or things like that, if you use the like operator.
I'm not going to say only the following. We're just going to say the following forms can be compiled to SQL, because there might be other ones that can be compiled, right?
Not at this moment. And once we add them, we'll add them also in the documentation.
Okay, what are we trying to resolve in this meeting? I'm sufficiently out of context. It's been several weeks since we met. I'm not sure what this. Have I gone through every word that's in here so far?
Yes.
Okay, so what did we want to look at again here?
So in this one, you wanted more examples, and there are more examples now. There will be even more soon.
You know what? You can't have an example that doesn't even have any text here. Come on.
That might be my fault. I think based on our node changes, there was a conflict in in CVS.
For elements in each period in the periodic table. For each period class. And this here would be.
This is the total land mass.
No, it's not the total land mass, it's the total area.
Yeah, but land area.
It's not. There's a separate property called land area.
Yeah, but it doesn't include oceans. That's what I mean.
Yes, but it includes lakes. So don't say land area. You know what? This is incomprehensible. I mean, in other words, okay. Aggregate. Create an aggregated entity class. How to explain this? Create an aggregation of the total areas of all countries. Then extract the total area. I don't know, it's somewhat confusing, but whatever.
Maybe without the first total.
No, because the aggregation okay. Create an aggregation by computing the total area.
Yes.
Can we say create an aggregation of all countries and compute the total area?
Whatever. Find the average population. What are we going to do with the missing there?
Yeah, we remove. That's why that example we substituted with the area because the missing is not treated properly.
Well, how should the missing be treated?
Well, I think in this case, as if you're doing total as 0.
Somebody on a live stream is saying this functionality is ugly. I could not agree more. It's disgusting. But it's basically a wrapper around SQL. I mean, this is a completely stupid way to compute this result. How would we compute it in a sensible way? We just say total of right? We just say that. Oh, for goodness sake, what is going on here? But that should work. Right?
That does work, but I mean, if you do that on something which is very large database, then it's just gonna stream a huge amount of data, choke up your memory, and
Sure, but this is the optimization for the fancy people. I mean, this is what anybody ordinary would do. An equivalent computation suitable for small data.
Maybe that shouldn't go into basic examples.
What's that? Yes,
I
it
think
should,
that
because otherwise
goes in-
people won't understand what's going on. They'll look at this and they'll say, why the hell would I do that? By the way, you're going to have to run this when this bug is fixed. I mean, also this is unnecessarily complicated, right? I mean, it could just say,
Yeah. But there are examples later where we have a shorter form. So, for example, the one with total amount of payments below is much shorter.
so why don't you get the short form first?
Because the short form is kind of an abuse of notation, and that's, as the first example, should be the first usage message, I think. I mean, it's 2 lines down. It's there. It's not that it's not there.
Okay, what do you want me to look at here? I mean, I think this is unbelievably complicated, as a user has said here. And, you know, it's great if you're doing large-scale stuff with big SQL databases. Okay, what should we be looking at here? What was the point of this meeting?
Mostly you have to review all the existing, like entity property, entity list, entity function, all of those you haven't looked at all. This one, you just had a complaint that there weren't enough examples.
Okay. Okay. What? When do we call it a complex single entity? When do we use that term?
Nowhere yet,
Never
I
used.
guess.
Okay. So why isn't it looking like this? Why doesn't it look exactly like this?
The reason is that, so it is complex in the sense that you could have, say, if the first argument is, say, G8, and the second argument is Portugal, then that entity doesn't exist because G8 is not in Portugal.
So what's your point? I mean,
So the
is
point
this
is
a selector or is this always a name?
No, that's always a name. That's the canonical name. But the thing is that it represents, in the sense of SQL, you're performing a complicated query and then you're selecting one row of that query. So in that sense, it's complex in the sense that it's not one of the base entity types that come with whatever you registered or whatever is built in. So it could be like a combined entity.
Okay, so this, we don't want to say this. We don't want to say it like that because that's a named class, right? So what this represents...
Well, not necessarily a named class. You could have that could be a combined entity class.
No, I understand, but it doesn't want to be a named entity. It's a okay. Represents an entity from the computed class specified by CSpec.
That works.
Oh, for God's sake, not this bug again.
I'll fix it.
Well, we reported that bug and it was ignored, apparently. Okay, let's get Brian on the call, please.
Okay.
Somebody do that. Thank you. It's kind of amusing in what it did, I suppose. Oh, gosh. People on the live stream are saying that all this stuff needs more elaborate documentation, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I assume that you guys are making a one of these tech notes or tutorials. I mean, not tutorials, monographs or
Yeah.
tech notes about this stuff. What's the state of that?
Well, it's closer to the beginning still, but I am going to accelerate on that in the next several days.
Okay. Ethan on our live stream is encouraging the examples to actually show why the thing exists. I don't think that's really possible I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, that monograph will contain examples that will illustrate why these constructs are useful, which can be much better seen on more complex queries where all things become entangled. And here,
I think this Ethan on our live stream is confused about what's going on here. These are native queries in SQL. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
This is not something where we're doing it. This thing here is not a native query because it's not on something which needs to be in SQL. But everything else here, that's a native query that's happening at the speed that Postgres, it's happening through Postgres or whatever thing is managing that relational database.
Yeah, but also the other thing here is that this layer on top of SQL isn't trivial because it transforms the thinking mode from SQL to functional, because we have compositional and functional blocks in here, while SQL is different.
Yeah.
And the composition in SQL is different. So that's why it's useful.
Right. Well, and also this is in fact a lot cleaner in the end, because and we should show somewhere what this turns into as an SQL query. How do you get that out again? What the actual query was?
Last time you asked to contribute a function to function repository that would do that. We also talked about having a separate property in the entity value that would be called SQL string, but I'm not sure whether it was decided to have it or not.
I think we could have that. I don't think that would be harmful.
That would be by far the easiest way, I guess.
Well, then let's do it. But I mean, and that will be an SQL string specific to. So how would I extract that SQL string for this, for example? Can I see it right now?
Say entity value of whatever query you have.
No, I'm asking something that actually works right now. You must have an internal function that does that.
We do, but...
oh, by the way, there's a bug there, whatever that is.
I'm not sure that I'm ready to tell you what it is right away. I'm sorry. But we will certainly flesh this out and make it work very, very
well. I mean, I think that the way it should work is like with the third argument to entity value. And that could be SQL string. And if it's applicable, then you get the SQL string.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So it's like extracting the data set, you extract the SQL string.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Brian. Something is very wrong with DocuTools. Do I need to update my DocuTools or something? Because they're making just a total mess.
Is it this email that you sent a few minutes ago?
Yep, that was what I got when I did an untentative on that cell.
Up in the usage, is what it looks like.
Yep. And it's the same thing. You saw those bugs where the 12 plus thing is, infecting pieces of the actual text.
I think so. Yeah. I'll talk to Jay and we'll get this fixed. I don't think an update's going to help you here. I think it's just the tentativing up there has been. We usually are supposed to use the mod info buttons, like the F to the bright pink F up there makes it future. The fact that futurizing and tentativing works up there at all was kind of a later addition. But we can make it work.
All right. Okay. No problem. Okay. Thanks.
Did you need something else from me?
Nope.
All right.
That was it. Thanks a lot. Bye. Okay. By the way, if you get a lump of SQL code, what can you do with it? I mean, can you literally just put it into some, just feed it into a database, or should we have some embed code type thing that gives you wrapper stuff for it?
We need something like that, yes.
Well, that actually
Something like that.
That depends, really. Because
so the thing is that there is a common thing that is done is that you get the SQL string with placeholders for parameters, and then you get the parameters separately. That's very common.
Okay, but maybe we can do that with an embed code thing with it, which emits a string template. Now, I'd like to see this SQL code. Could you figure out what the internal function is that you call to get it?
yeah, if you give me like 5-10 minutes,
Okay.
I'll see.
In the meantime, we can look at the tentativized details there.
Yeah, we need to. We need to. Okay, possible entity types. Is that really true? Entity value open close gives you a bunch of these types.
Yes, that's since the beginning. And the reason was we have those data functions that return a list of the entities, and entity value is one level above, so it gives the list of types.
Okay, so this is a bad idea. Okay, we should not describe this. Bad idea. But what we should do instead is, since we now have entity pages, right? On this page, we should link to the list of entities, entity types. Okay, so that requires, and that's something, Andrea, that's something for you for, I'm doing an entity page knitting session with Alan at 8:30 tonight. Something we're going to need is a landing page for all entities. Andrea, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I'm going to talk to Alan then to see.
Okay, so let me explain what that's related to, okay, and what we're going to need to set up. Okay, so if I go to import here, oh, for God's sake, what is wrong with this? Whatever, something has been really broken. Okay, so you see that thing that says listing of formats?
Yes.
Okay, so what we want to add here is something that says listing of basic entity types. Actually, we don't even need to say that. Let's just say listing of entity types. All right, so what you need to do is figure out how that gets done, and that's a Brian question. And then we need to point that to a page that Alan and I need to create, which is that top level listing of entity types. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Do you plan to do that tonight, everything?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we can do that, but then this has to be linked by Brian in the same way that the import-export thing was linked.
Okay.
In fact, you could warn Alan that we're going to do this and what it's for, that it's a link from this page, okay?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay, imagine if you think of, so entity value takes 2 arguments, entity list takes 1 argument, and then the listing of all types is the 0 argument continuation of this.
Yeah, what? So?
I don't know. The problem is that entity list is a separate function, but if entity value of a class returned the list of entities, then this would kind of...
I don't care. It doesn't. It's just not something. It's not a piece of functionality that I think, what good is going to come of having that list?
Well, if you have that list, then you can map on it entity count, for example, to figure out which is the type that has the most entities.
I don't want. Who cares? You might care, but I don't think anybody legitimately cares about that.
Well, it's analogous to the $ import formats, export formats.
I know, but it's different. And it has a lot of cruddy stuff in it, right? That we don't really want to expose to people. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff here. What is a yoga prop? Nobody here. Some kind of thing about
I think the break, stuff like that. Yeah.
So when you are ready, I can paste the code that needs to be executed to switch on the
This is the craziest stuff we have here.
logger.
Okay, whatever. I mean,
My
there's a
favorite
lot of
is-
weird stuff, and this list is about to get a great deal longer.
There's one that's like food crust, something.
And what's this? These are entity types that have been dynamically added here, right?
Yeah, because you just register them.
I would prefer to just not list this here. I would prefer to just not say that. Okay, let's look at, and so on this listing of entity types, what we want to do is to, yeah, okay, what do you want to show, Leonard? Are you going to send me something, or do I have to look on your screen?
No, I'll send you. It's just
Good.
single line that you need
Okay,
to
just send me. How
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
And then if you execute any example in a database, you'll see the query printed in addition to the result.
Okay, but this is not how we want it to really be.
Yeah, I understand. But since you want it now to have some way, this is the easiest we have right now.
Okay, all right. So now this is the aggregated whatever thing here. Okay, that was pretty trivial in SQL. Show me something which won't be as trivial in SQL.
Okay. I'll just paste it in here. This is slightly less trivial. But also in all these examples here in the documentation pages for separate functions, most of them in terms of SQL will be rather trivial.
Right, and by the way, we should give some examples here under properties and relations, probably, for how this relates to the SQL stuff. Okay.
You mean on a separate for each separate function?
Yeah, this function, we should show what the SQL for this function basically is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
What is this? Oh, for goodness sake. Well, it's nice that somebody pointed out that this here. This is dumb, and we should remove it. Really dumb. Why is this even relevant to this function? I'm going to remove this. It's not even accurate anymore. There's no food crust in here. By the way, are there examples here of these computed?
First one in scope.
That's a really shitty example, if I might say so. I mean, this aggregated entity class thing looks pointless.
No, but I think the point of this example has been to show that you can get user information from entities with the, of this new class that has been computed. So these entities, they didn't exist before, and they contain useful information such as a total or average population in this case. And you can still pick a single entity and get out this useful value. So it's not an entity of a base class in a way.
Yeah. What is this? What the heck is this?
That's not something I added. That's something that probably...
That can be removed. That was an early design.
Okay, so what does this do? What is this? What is the correct statement for this? Okay, this shouldn't be as high up as this. Okay, so all of this stuff is about registered types. Is that true? I mean, or not from a computed class, right? Is that right? Everything here.
Depends. For example, the identifier name is generally a string, but for certain types can be lists and integers. That's also for computed types. Also, yeah, I mean, if the entity still has a label, even if it's complex, then those things about the traditional form and the standard form are true.
Okay, but it comes from the label then.
Oh, by the way, that thing that you futurized to 12 plus has actually been true since the beginning of times.
I'm aware. This is almost certainly going to fail if I try and change that. Actually worked. Okay. Let's just try to understand. Oh boy. Where do we say, okay, an implicitly defined entity, we're not even documenting that in the main. I'm totally confused. This isn't really correct because we really want people to use implicitly defined entity classes, not implicitly defined entities, right?
Which is probably why this is so low in this set.
Yeah, but I think we should just remove it.
But for things like food, they still exist, right?
What still exists?
The implicit entities.
I don't know. Tony, can you speak to that, please?
So there are different use cases. Sometimes you want an average entity, like in the case of food, and sometimes you want a class of entities. And for each...
Okay, but where in this documentation does it show me how to do implicit entity classes?
I'm wondering whether that disappeared, because I remember it being there.
No, but this is about entity, not entity classes.
Yes.
So why should it still, and why should it go tell about implicit entity classes on this page?
Because apparently they're also implicit entities.
Yeah, but that's a different thing.
Okay, Tony, what does this stuff down here mean? An implicitly defined entity. We don't say anything about what the implicitly defined entities are.
There should be a usage line.
What would it say?
Well, that comment actually says it pretty well.
So we actually want a line like this, correct? Is that correct?
Yes. But there's a difference. So the way that the properties are chosen, the entities are chosen is the same, but then the properties are aggregated with a certain default aggregate function for that property.
Okay. Okay, so we in fact need something else here, right? We need something which says basically this, right? All of this needs to be here. How do we not have this here? This is really weird. Because
I think you wanted to deprecate them. They basically don't make much sense outside of food.
No, they're average properties, right? Is that true or is that not true?
Yes, true.
But for a lot of things, it's not really defined, and there's this whole extensive, intensive thing. I mean, it's the support is quite scattered.
What are you talking about? Every property has this kind of aggregator. And by the way, you got to get hold of Brian again, because we need to actually be able to enter this stuff.
Okay. Going to call him.
This is stupid. I mean, this is stupid. What's here is not adequate, right? And by the way, is this correct? Entity of type is sometimes used to represent a generic entity of the specified type.
It's more like it represents an entity type.
No, but don't we have... No, but where is it doing that?
For instance, types can have type information. For instance, a type can have a singular and a plural label attached to it.
Okay. Do you give an example of that? Okay, look. First of all, does this in fact make sense? Represents an averaged entity
whose members specify conditions on their property. That would be more precise.
What?
An average entity is, of course, constructed from some entities that you start with, and then you average over them.
No, that's nonsense.
Imagine, for instance, food, in which you have some food items, but you don't want to talk about a specific one, but instead of the class of those foods, averaged over the individual items.
Give me an example. Just send me an example of this. Is there any example here? By the way, I just don't understand. Whoever wrote this doesn't know how to write documentation. Why aren't there separators here? What was going on here? Okay, Carla. No, it's Andrea who's here. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Who wrote this documentation? Does anybody know? Tony, did you do this?
Well, maybe Nick was involved too, who first started.
I really don't want to have to rewrite the whole thing. So has nothing to do with, I mean, it's just like, can we make sure to follow through on all other pages to make the similar kinds of fixes?
Yeah, that's what this page is there, because you haven't looked at it.
No. This is old stuff. This is not stuff that was recently added.
Yeah, that was
old stuff.
Yes, that's right.
Can you get somebody other than me to look at this? I really don't want to have to go through all of this. Maybe Michael can look at this stuff. This really looks bad, honestly. This really should be totally redone. It's really stupid. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just like whoever wrote this know? Certainly Nick knows how to write this documentation. What is this? This is just dumb. Okay, this unfortunately all needs to be rewritten. I really don't want to do it.
Okay, I can schedule a meeting with Michael through.
This is really dumb. Look at this. This is dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do it this way? Why don't you just start off with entity, country, United States?
Hi, it's Brian again.
Why would anybody yak on about standard form here? Oh, for goodness sake. Well, that needs to be fixed when this is not broken, okay? Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you understand? Are you sure? Right, that's obviously broken, right? Okay, do you understand that that's broken? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, now, how are you going to get it? Okay, whatever. Let's see if we can, I'll just paste in something from an earlier version because I don't trust you guys to not get this wrong. Come on. This is really remarkably bad documentation. And Andrea, could you find out who put it in so we know? Can you go back to CVS and go figure out
Yes.
who put it
Yes,
in?
I can.
And if you can let me know in a couple of minutes, that would be really helpful.
Okay, I'm looking into it. Brian is here with us, by the way.
I am. Hi.
Basically, DocuTools is total. What the heck? What the heck is going on here? Tony, what do you know about this? Is this some package update that's broken everything?
Well, I don't know about that.
Let's get hold of Nick, please. Can somebody get hold of Nick?
Yes.
So the entity documentation was initially written by Oyvind, it seems.
Wow. Weird.
At least started.
So that. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. Okay, now Okay, so this needs a complete rewrite. So maybe, Tony, are you the right person to do this, or who's the right person to do this?
I'm not sure.
I got to get all the crufty stuff out. Okay, but let's go back up. Okay, so basically, if I copy paste this, I just get garbage. Brian.
You copied the whole box there.
No, I'm copying that piece. I paste it here. I get absolute garbage.
So copy the whole box there. Like just select the whole inline cell, not just the text that's in there. So like put the cursor to the right of that.
I've done this a zillion times. There is a new bug.
Well, try and triple click the entity class on the right side. I mean, because you're copying an entire bunch of boxes into an existing inline cell.
I know. I've done it a gazillion times. Okay, that worked. Well, okay. All right. Well, thanks. I'm pretty sure this was working before and somehow was more robust. Okay, but anyway, so
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Brian.
Okay. Well, let me know if you need me again.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Okay. So what is this, guys?
It's an average entity of the member entities, and the member entities are defined by the conditions on the properties.
Can you tell who wrote the basic examples, Andrea?
Those I already explicit the ones that wrote examples. One of them also said per Michael Trott, but he was not the user that updated.
No, I understand. Those basic examples, who wrote those?
Okay, let me check if I can see that.
Who is Adam G? I don't know. Okay. All right. So what are we doing with this case? Guys, what are we doing with this case?
I don't know.
So are we just deleting this or not? We're either putting that up there or we're deleting this here. Tony, do people need this or not?
Yes, it's needed for the food framework.
Okay, then give me an example. I asked you for an example of where this is used.
Apple or banana.
Okay, so tell me what's a type.
Control equal.
Control equal what?
Banana, for instance. And then in the assumptions, choose a food type.
Give me a more real example where it isn't just where it doesn't just say it's a food type contains exactly banana.
I think Michael or Andrew would better know about food in particular.
Okay, then
you can do things like hamburger with fries, yeah. You get added food types.
what the heck is that? That was crazy. Do we need to document this, or can this just be an output for food? that perhaps eventually we'll do it in a different way. Tony?
That seems reasonable. We can redefine all of those entities in terms of the new aggregated entity class functionality.
Then let's do it. This just seems super confusing. Oh gosh, look at this. It says it only works for food. Come on, guys.
Have you seen the example on Twitch chat?
You sent a disaster example where this aggregated entity thing doesn't work, right?
No. Yeah, well, these implicitly defined entities. I mean, I think that for some properties we should just bail out, and instead, sometimes
Nick here.
That's.
I am now forgetting why. I think we wanted to talk to you because we thought you had written examples for entity. Did you? Yeah, you did, apparently, ages ago. And I was complaining about the examples, the initial examples, which I have now completely removed.
Okay.
Do you remember writing those examples, or does that have nothing to do with you? Oh, no, I know what the question. I'm sorry. I have a completely different question.
Mm-hmm.
Something is wrong with my build.
Yeah, it looks like the. Oh, well.
This is now an 11.3, so this is some kind of Packlet update that made this fail.
That's weird. That 2 meters would work, but
look at that. That works now. But
yeah,
now I go over here.
I saw on the entity page you had one that was doing that.
Well, this is in a different version.
Okay,
what's going on there? And
so
how? Yeah,
it's doing that if it's failing for some reason to load the units resources. So that other notebook, that's version 12.
This is version 12. Yeah, this is current
12.
release. Well, let's see what the messages said.
Let's see. That looks like DocuTools.
No,
stuff.
DocuTools. Is it a Packlet? Is there a Packlet?
There's a Packlet. And you could try restarting the kernel to see. I'm wondering if the DocuTools messages there suggesting that maybe it was interrupted loading. No. If you do rebuild Packlet data and then quit.
Rebuild Packlet data of what?
Of nothing. So that'll just refresh the Packlet resources for all the installed Packlets. Then... Okay, that's weird.
Okay. You need. Okay.
And I don't know what the status of the meeting is here. I can give you a couple other things to debug, or I can try.
I really need. Could you get hold of Roger and see whether you guys can reproduce this?
Okay.
And because I got to move on here. Okay. You could, and then call back in here if you can.
Okay. Yeah, will do.
Okay. This is not how we say this. This is really bad. What's here? Shoot, this is really bad too. Okay, how much stuff do we have to? I'm not going to have time right now. Have I seen this or not?
Yes, today, mostly.
So you wrote this, but I haven't read it yet. Is that correct?
I think you read at least the usage messages of this. and edit it.
No, no, no. Come on, get rid of all this junk from here. Actually, this stuff here applies only to built-in entity types, correct or not correct?
Not correct.
Okay, but then so it wouldn't be type, it would just be entity of spec, right?
No, it would be spec.
Right.
Directly.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be type. It wouldn't be quote type.
I'm telling you, it can be C spec instead of
Exactly.
without the wrapping entity.
Right. Or without the wrapping entity, it can just be C spec on its own inside the entity value.
Yeah.
All right, let's start rewriting this whole thing. Represents an entity of the specified type identified by name. Represents an entity okay. Well, it's not just entity expressions, it's the whole thing, right? This entity value thing, the complete entity value thing can be specified using control equals.
Yes.
This is really this. When was this written? Was this written like 10 years ago or something? How do we usually say that? And by the way, why on earth does this not say? Can somebody find out how we usually say that? Now, Tony, could you go find that out, please? Look at some
What are possible examples?
I don't know. I mean, okay, listen, I'm going to have to go in a few minutes, so I don't know how we want to do this. This is really not good because we're still not finished with this, and we're kind of running out of time here.
I can schedule a meeting with Michael to review these old symbols, all the documentation.
When is Michael back?
Tomorrow.
I think that's what should happen. Yes. All right. I'll try and get this a little bit further, and then then Michael's got to look at it. Okay.
Okay.
This is garbage. Come on, guys.
Maybe we should mention interpreter as well there.
Nope. I've thought about that, but I don't think it's the right thing to do. because we can, hopefully this points to crazy. Doesn't even point to interpreter. And that certainly should be in properties and relations. Let's get rid of these. Okay, from here. Tony?
Yes.
All of this junk. Just let's get rid of it. All that stuff there. I'll tantalize it. Properties and relations here. Interpreter can return entity. Okay, can we get rid of this? What the hell is this? Okay, can be specified with natural language using control equals. Entity expressions formed in standard form using a print form of entity name. Format instead of when possible, right? Because does it always have a name? It could be the C-spec entity, right? What would it do then?
If it has a defined label, it uses that. Otherwise, it falls back to name. That means the canonical name.
No, I'm talking about when it has some complicated aggregated thing. It won't do anything. It will give no formatting, won't it?
No, it will. As a matter of fact, the first example in scope shows the new formatting.
Okay. This is irrelevant. We shouldn't even talk about that here. But what we should do in this case is, what is the name of the thing that says the caching thing? What is it called? Do you know what I'm talking about? The thing that caches, Nick's function that caches.
Entity prefetch.
What is it called?
Entity prefetch.
And this should certainly point to entity prefetch. Okay. Represents a registered entity type. Is that correct?
If you mean also the built-in entity types?
Yeah, I mean either one. Or registered entity type. Is this really true? Is just the print form string? I think we should get to these somewhere way down at the bottom. Okay, the entity type. Okay. You don't say it's a string, it says double quotes. Can be either a built-in entity type or a type registered with entity register, correct?
Yes.
Do we link to entity register here? Apparently not. What does entity type name do in the case of an entity? So with a composite entity, this identity is still true, right?
It's a problem when it's a combined entity class because there's no unique type.
No, I'm just asking, is this identity true? Identity type name of entity of first argument blah, right? That's true.
It's just a listable first.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but I think that entity type name is, the way it works right now is rather, it won't cut it for the new types of classes.
Okay, so you need to figure out what to do with this. Let's come back to this here. Okay, so the question here is name. Is this right? Is this correct? This next line here.
Yes, because there are certain infinite families of entities. Maybe.
Okay, but that's okay. Fine. Property values of an entity. Property values of an entity can be computed using now, is that correct that it has to be a string or an entity property expression? Is that correct?
Yes, and now also an entity function.
String, an entity property expression, or an entity function expression. Okay. In this, okay, now let's hope that this doesn't break this thing. Let's hope this doesn't mess this up. Amazing. Okay. Can be any of the following. What's that brace doing there? Don't we want to say what these are? I don't understand how you can have a name if you've got some complicated composite entity structure. How does a name refer to something in that?
It's less a name as more syntax for indexing into that new table.
Well, so give me an example.
Oh, but sometimes it's a name. For example, we can do aggregated entity class.
Okay, so in this case, the name, we just wrote that the name is a string, an entity, right? Okay, but that's not true in this case, right? Here's an entity class as the name, right?
No, it just happens to be one. It can be an arbitrary expression now.
So what we wrote here is not correct. Is that right? The identifier string is not correct.
That line is correct for the string type. If you have a general C spec in the first argument, then we might want to explain the algebra that relates the first argument to the second argument.
Yeah, but I still don't understand why we would say anything like that about what name is, because it could be that you have a database where the primary key is a timestamp, so those will be date objects. It could be that it is some sort of UUID, or for some reason it gets imported as byte array.
Okay, so you say that there's no point in saying what this is.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Tony's right that we should explain how the algebra is constructed, but...
Right, but that's not in this section, right? Because we've got to go on with the C-spec section.
Yeah. No, but yeah. I don't think there's any... I mean, when you connect to an external database, that name can be anything.
Okay, so... Okay, entities... Entity objects... Actually, what we got to say first is... Actually, what we got to say is built-in entity objects can be specified with natural language using this, right? Because nothing else is going to work with that. Right? Entity objects can be associated with, now what are we going to say? Is it entity stores? What do we say here? Tony?
Which entities? Which entity objects? You mean the second?
Any entity objects. I mean, we don't even reference entity store here, do we?
So I see two types of categorization here. One is a base entity that is derived from a string type, and then there are these complex typed entities.
Yes.
A constructed type. And I would not really make the distinction between built-in and entity store entities, because I try to make it as transparent as possible where they come from.
Yeah, but the whole point is that that's not going to work, right? Because, for example, there's no linguistics for an entity store entity, right?
Currently, no.
Right, so that's the answer. Or the type registered that is can be either a built-in entity type or a type specified in an entity store, or what's the relational database version of that?
It's the same.
We also use entity store, Stephen.
Okay. In entity of type common name, okay, that seems like it's a clarifying remark. Okay, so now we've got to say, this can probably go further down, because that's true in all these cases, right?
Yes.
Okay. In entity,
maybe above it should be new in 11 as opposed to 12.
okay, you fix that, please. the computed class can be okay, so now well, it's not just any of the following, because it's got to be something that returns a single entity, right? How do you give the name? I don't understand how you give the name. In the case of so in this form, where does the name come from?
It's
Okay,
basically
so
a primary key for all of these classes.
it depends. Entity class, sorted entity class, sampled entity class, filtered entity class, and extended entity class. It's the same name as the base entity. The last two are more complicated.
Well, what are they?
So for aggregated entity class, it's a list that corresponds to the third argument of aggregated entity class. In combined entity class is a list that contains basically the canonical name of the first argument and the canonical name of the second argument.
Okay, we're going to have to make a table that actually specifies this, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I got to go. Can we try to get this set up within the next 2 days so that we have not forgotten what's going on?
But we need to review first with Michael, and I just see
No,
him
I'm going to have to simply rewrite this. I'm going to simply have to rewrite all this documentation. So there's no reason to do that.
Okay.
Just get a meeting with me as soon as you can.
Okay.
Okay. See y'all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
But